Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the National Training and Simulation Association's annual conference and trade show called iFest. And we've got with us Jordan Thomas, who is with CommunityForce, a very innovative company that's looking at all sorts of training systems and approaches. You're a retired colonel in the United States Air Force, and a fellow New Yorker, I would point out. Jordan, talk to us a little bit about CommunityForce and where you guys fit into the whole training architecture, because what you do is take a lot of very commercially available technologies, put them together into sort of more high-end training solutions.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, CommunityForce is really a pioneering technology company and a consulting company. So we have two things that are working for us. We have our own technology in terms of software, and then we also have the consulting services that help take the customer on a journey to achieve their goals. So CommunityForce was founded in 2010. In 2017, I was brought on board to work with our CEO to build out CommunityForce Federal. That's going to be specifically focused on the Air Force and DoD. We were fortunate enough to work with Adobe systems. They've got a great capability with their communities of learning. We saw that and as a potential aid for the Air Force to help develop their continuum of learning. So we've taken that Adobe systems capability. We have worked with Air Education Training Command to go through the entire process, and we've been able to configure this learning system that is able to scale out up to 800,000 people in the Air Force eventually.
And that's an extraordinary spread, because AETC is one of the largest training organizations in the United States military. You were the beneficiary of that as a B-1 pilot. You had to go through the training pipeline at all phases, and then you were an instructor pilot, of course, as well. Talk to us a little bit about how training is changing, even in the scope of your career, and where it's going from your perspective. And then how the services themselves have to change in order to try to take advantage of the technology. As we talked to Dr. Say Schatz, her point was you're not just taking the technology and dropping it on the existing training system. The entire training approach and philosophy and thinking have to change as well.
Oh, absolutely, and I'm starting to see that in the Air Force. And the whole idea in the Air Force now is going to be focused around talent management. So how do you take somebody in, recruit them, hire them, take care of them all the way through retirement? So how do you do the hire to retire capability with the talent management? Air Education and Training Command has a very big part of that. They're responsible now really for that continuum of learning for the new airman that comes into the Air Force. And that continuum of learning includes education, includes training, and something else called experience. So basically, how do you get somebody from a 5 level to a 7 level? And so we are happy to be part of that by instituting one of the Air Force learning ecosystem capabilities that we've been able to use from Adobe systems. So if you don't mind, everybody focuses on live, virtual, and constructive. You hear that all the time, and you can see the pictures of the F-35s that are linked in with the B-1 simulators, which are linked in with the F-16 simulators, and maybe even some other assets that are in there. And everybody talks about that live, virtual, constructive, and everybody gets that part of how that's how we need to train, because it's less expensive, it's more effective also for the learner. At Ground Speed Zero, we're looking at how do you apply that also to people that haven't taken their first flight yet. So how do they get the training, and how do they become knowledgeable and learn at different? We all know, everybody knows they learn at different rates. So how do you find those people and then personalize their training basically for them based upon their capabilities? So you and I may have different learning speeds, if you will, or different ways of learning. So now using big data analytics, some machine learning and artificial intelligence, now they may be able to give you the courses that you need in order to bring you up to speed. And I may have a different set of courses, but at the end, we'll both become pilots in the end. So that's how big data, artificial intelligence, and machine learning are really helping it. So we look at being able to harness that, and AETC is looking to harness that in order to provide that learning capability for everyone, within the Air Force. So we're glad to be part of that.
What is AETC doing, and how can you guys help? Because even within AETC, there are different sorts of training approaches, whether the Air Mobility Command, where it comes to the tanker transport folks, there's a different sort of approach than Air Combat Command has. You were an Air Combat Command guy as a bomber guy. Talk to us a little bit about what are the changes within that portfolio that will lead to more sort of harmonized approaches as opposed to the somewhat different kind of approaches that we've got now?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it has a lot to do with technology. First of all, Air Education and Training Command, across Air Education and Training Command with the Air Force Academy, with Air University, and even the headquarters itself, there's 14 different learning management systems. All of those are in different stages. Some are being sunset, some are being just brought on, some are being bought out, etc. But there are a whole bunch of different ones. So AETC said, hey, why do we have to have all these disparate LMSs? Why can't we do something that brings in this capability in one direction or in one way? And that's why they selected Adobe systems to do this to communities, is that it doesn't replace the LMSs, but it's a better way to integrate with those LMSs. And then as those other LMSs are sunset or brought on, they're easily being able to integrate. So it's no longer about just one technology, it's about using all the technologies most efficiently.
And you were a bomber pilot. Where do you see the line in how much can be done in simulators, how much more potentially can be done in simulators, and how much gas you actually have to burn to get out there and to do the mission? If you talk to old timers, they're like, well, sims are sort of interesting, but there's no substitute to actually getting out there and flying the aircraft. You talk to a younger generation of folks, they're like, well, actually, there's a huge role for the systems, and even very simplistic, whether it's iPad based or other ways, for visualization and just certain road tasks and figure checklists and things like that to go over. Where do you see that line or that blend between how much gas you've got to burn and how much power you've got to burn sitting in a sim?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say you don't even have to be in a simulator anymore. And I'll give you a story. It was that when I first started pilot training, I learned the switches and the buttons basically by having a paper mock-up of the cockpit and sit in front of that for hours with my dash one over to my left.
That was how you did switchology back then.
Absolutely. But now what we're looking at is that we're looking at being able to do this through virtual reality, even a mixed reality capability where sitting right at home, I can be on my laptop or my iPad and take a course about hydraulics or about the T-38 or even the B-1. As soon as I'm done with that, what I would call a flat course or regular course that gets updated in my training record, now I can still stay in my seat, turn to my right, put on a virtual reality headset, and then basically do the same thing now in a 3D reality world. So I get that, I may not get the tactile capabilities as you do with switches, but you can at least point to a switch, get more information about it, understand what that switch does, and you can do this all at ground speed 0. Now with technology...
And 3/4 about it is sequencing, right? So you want to know that in this particular emergency or whatever I'm doing, here is the steps in the evolution, and that can coach you at least through it.
Oh, absolutely. And now I can do this at 11 p.m., I can do it at 5 in the morning. And that's the great thing about it. I don't have to wait for simulator time. That was one of the things you had, is you had to be scheduled for a simulator. You had to be scheduled for a cockpit trainer. Now you don't have to. You just put on the goggles, and now you can actually get through most of what you need to do before you get to your first flight. By the way, there's technologies now to measure how long it takes you to do that. So now instructors can actually figure out, okay, Jordan learns a little bit slower than everybody else, so we're going to have to give him an extra instructing. Or somebody else is the star, then they can, once again, tailor the syllabus for them to take advantage of their skills. So you see that personalization now that's going to be relevant to the Air Force. So what happens is this is really a time saver. So now you don't have to redo an entire flight. For example, if I failed a T-38 flight or a B-1 flight, you have to do it again. Right? And now that takes a whole bunch of resources. You have to get an extra pilot to fly, maintenance has to go out there and work on the jet. That maintenance time now, may affect the inspection time as well. So if you can, and that's not even to talk about the JP-8 that you're burning. So all of this is moving in a more cost-effective and efficient manner. So you can get that personalized learning, people learn, evaluators get to see what's going on, and now you have, you're making the most use of your time.
But it's not quite as cool as breaking the sound barrier in one of the world's coolest bomber aircraft.
Oh, absolutely. You're right. But at the same time, I would rather be breaking the sound barrier in my B-1, right, than having to do a whole bunch of, regular CPTs that are not very exciting. You want to have that experience. And so, and as you talk about, the Air Force and trying to recruit, retain pilots, you need to treat the pilots like, the millennials are today. So, why are we doing the old paper and pen stuff? Why are we doing just regular CPT, CBT classes when you have this mixed reality coming on board that people are already familiar with and then can leverage to get the most bang for the buck?
Jordan, thanks very much. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Vago.